Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So today we have a build that I never thought that I was going to cover. I didn't think the archetype was ever going to be more than a meme, but slowly but surely, this particular build has found its way into being one of the most consistent builds out there, and that is Cerebro 2. Now, Cerebro 2 offers a lot of flexibility, a lot of cheap and easy power push, a lot of disruption, just really everything that you would want in a Cerebro deck, and it does so all while being very, very accessible. So with this list, I would say only a few of the cards are absolutely critical, and that would be your Cerebro and your Mystique. Now, I would almost say that Brood is core as well, or required, just because there is so much bang for your buck with that card, but you can technically run it without it. And honestly, the rest of the list is very interchangeable. You could take out Korg, you could throw in your Invisible Woman, you could take out Korg, add in M'Baku. I've seen some versions run a Hobgoblin as a way to try to disrupt a key location for the opponent, so if they are really stacking and building up a combo in one lane, sometimes you can interrupt it with your Hobgoblin. I've seen some versions run a Yellow Jacket for a free kind of surprise power push or start to a lane. Now with this list, you're not always going to be able to beat the highest high rolls, but you should be able to identify when you are outmatched. So if you notice the plays of a Galactus coming up and then your opponent snaps, you're not going to be able to beat a Galactus drop. But at that point, you're probably safer retreating, unless maybe you try to sneak a Goose into that lane and then somehow try to position yourself in a way to win. But for the most part, that is a hard retreat. There are a few other matchups where if they get their high roll, you want to get out and mitigate your cube losses. But where the list shines is that it is incredibly consistent. You can draw into your cards in just about any order and still be able to push a good average amount of power onto the board every single game. And so with the brief deck explanation out of the way, we're going to go ahead and jump over into a couple of games. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, so first up we have Innocency OP. And yesterday, I think it was on our main account, they actually took us for quite a few cubes. They had a deck that just countered ours so heavily and we faced them 3 times in a row. So maybe we'll get a little bit of revenge here. So we do have in our starting hand, we have our Iceman, Mr. Sinister, Blue Marvel, and Cerebro. So those are beautiful pieces to be able to make sure that we get plenty of value out on the board. The Atelan location is not great, especially since we can't play Mr. Sinister on turn 2 like we would normally want to. Project Pegasus actually helps us out quite a bit here. Do we ever play Cerebro and Mystique before these cards go back into our deck? If they have an Enchantress or a Rogue, then that definitely hard counters us. But having these out on the board is one of the biggest enablers for this deck. We're going to go ahead and play them. It's not optimal. We could do Blue Marvel and Mystique, but I think the Cerebro and Mystique, it's just too good to pass up. So they use a White Queen. They're actually going to steal our Blue Marvel before it gets shuffled back into their deck. Ooh, and then the Agent Coulson. And so they're going to be shuffling 6 cards back in their deck. They have a potential pool of 12 to pull into, whereas we're only going to have 9. So we have much better chance of drawing into the resources that we want or need, rather than it just being completely random. So we do have the Storm, we have the Nightcrawler that we're going to play over into the Project Pegasus lane. We have Brood to follow up the Storm play. We're just in a really, really good spot. We would probably snap if we were playing a little bit more aggressively, but I like letting these play out. But I think we have all of the key resources that we need to be able to make this happen. Now, if they have a double Enchantress, which maybe it's an Enchantress and then an Absorbing Man, that could potentially do it. So maybe we should have stormed one of the lanes that were a little bit more susceptible, but I think that's okay. We could do... Actually, we're going to do just Blue Marvel here. I was thinking of doing Brood, but with doing it this way, we have the Nightcrawler. So if they decide not to invest here, we have the Nightcrawler that will be able to move over into the flooded lane if we need him to. We also have Brood and Mr. Sinister that we can drop to cap out both of these lanes on that last turn. So if we move our Nightcrawler over, we'll play Brood into the Project Pegasus lane, and we just get a lot of some phenomenal value there. And so we win the flooded lane pretty heavily as is. We don't need to move our Nightcrawler over, but we're still going to. There's no reason not to. We're just going to push the extra power over there, and we push them in a place where they're not able to win. So the consistency and the amount of power that this can push can really hold its own against a lot of decks. Now, they obviously didn't have their ideal or their high roll, but that is what you're shooting for. With this list, you're not going to beat all decks high rolls, but what you can do is very consistently beat their mid rolls or their low rolls, and that is where this list shines. All right, next up we have Ceaseless Storm, and we actually have something that I think is going to be pretty interesting here. We have Sacred Timeline, so we're going to get copies of our starting hand if we can be the first one to fill it up, which with cards like Mr. Sinister and Brood, we should be able to. And so we're going to have 2 Mystiques to be able to play. I think what we're going to do is we're going to push to win that far left lane as early as humanly possible. We want to get that extra Mystique because that's going to increase our high roll potential quite a bit. Nidavellir is a location that we definitely will want to avoid unless we can draw into Storm. If we can draw into Storm, great. If not, then we can't play anything there, which is one of the downsides to this list, is that it's not able to be quite as flexible. It only has one way to change those locations. And so if you don't hit it, it can be sometimes problematic. Okay, so the Superflow gives us additional energy each turn. And so we do draw into our Storm, which is beautiful. That is exactly what we want to see here. I'm going to go ahead and play Goose into the Sacred Timeline because we're going to be able to get another Mr. Sinister. We're going to be able to get another Nightcrawler and another Mystique, which will be phenomenal follow-ups to the Storm play line. We're going to go ahead and snap on them. We're very, very confident in this play line and what we have. We're going to see if we can get some extra cubes out of them. We're going to play it a little bit more aggressively, or how I normally would outside of recording or outside of commentating. And so we do get that is beautiful. Those are beautiful cards to have in our starting hand. We're going to be able to have 3 Cerebros out on the board, which is really, really massive. And so for turn 4, we're going to do Storm and Mr. Sinister into Nidavellir. And then next turn, maybe we start looking to push our Blue Marvel. Maybe we look to start pushing our Cerebro out on the board. Now, they snapped back. They could have a Hawk of their own because they have the Korg, they have the Rock Slide. Maybe they drew into their Zabu. The Spider-Man is interesting, but it's not absolutely critical that we play into that lane next turn anyways, because we're already going to have 3 of our very valuable cards located there. And so we have some pretty decent power there. They can only play there 1 more turn, so the Absorbing Man to copy the Spider-Man is not going to be as beneficial, and they don't have Zabu, so they can't flood as much onto the board as they normally would like to. So I think my hardest decision here is, do we go Blue Marvel and then the Cerebro Mystique, or do we go Cerebro Mystique? Next turn we can move our Nightcrawler over, we can play 1 more Mystique into the Sacred Timeline, and then we play our last Nightcrawler or Scorpion into the Superflow. I think that's what I'm leaning towards, just because everything except for the Cerebro and the Mystiques will get buffed up. We'll be able to have a pretty decent Superflow lane, pretty decent Sacred Timeline, and then the flooded location should not be an issue for us. And so they don't play into the flooded location. They may be playing a Spider-Man here, or the Absorbing Man to copy the Spider-Man, but as long as they don't have an Enchantress, I think we should be able to still finagle or finesse our way into winning this game. And so they do use the Absorbing Man that copies the Spider-Man's ability. We have the flooded location just locked down. Now it comes down to, can we win one of the other 2? So if they have an Enchantress here, that is all that they're going to be able to play. If they have a Rogue, they can steal 1 of our 2, but they won't be able to steal both. I can't see them being able to win this one. We're going to go with the Mystique. I think that's our ideal play line. It gives us an extra push in the Superflow and the Sacred Timeline, and they don't retreat here. Very interesting. I don't know. It's 2 low-cost cards. What could they have that's gonna give them the double Enchantress the Enchantress is the scary part, but we do have the Mystique that we had initiative to copy, and so the Sacred Timeline came in very, very clutch for us. They do swing the Superflow, but our Mystique in the far left lane clutches us out the 8 cube win. Let's go ahead and take it. We'll jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have Selenar. The first location is the Wakandan Embassy, which is not great for us. That is definitely not ideal and makes our Mr. Sinister and Scorpion unusable. We can still use Mystique, which is absolutely fine, but the others it makes unusable. Now, if we can win Asgard, we can get some pretty good value here, because we'll be able to draw into our additional cards, which is sorely, sorely needed right now. They do play a Korg, so I expect maybe a Zabu Hawk deck. So no matter what we play here, it's not going to reveal this turn. I think I'm just going to play the Storm into the far right lane. If we get Brood next turn, that is beautiful. That should help us win Asgard. If not, that's okay as well. We will just play the Mr. Fantastic and the Nightcrawler there, and then to hopefully swing the location. They skipped last turn, so maybe they play a She-Hulk. No, they play over into the left lane. Selenar, very interesting that you're not pushing to win Asgard, which we're completely fine with. The Mr. Fantastic is going to give us a little bit more reach. The Moon Girl double down before you play anything else is kind of bold. I'm guessing that you missed your Zabu pool and you weren't able to play the Moon Girl into Asgard. So maybe it's just a Devil Dino, just a value strong Devil Dino, and then they copy it with Mystique. But I think we might still be able to push to win Asgard. I'm going to play Blue Marvel into the flooded location. We have a 1 out of 3 shot to draw into our Cerebro. That would give us the biggest elevation in our... They skip again. Interesting. What? Oh, it is the... Ooh. What are we expecting? 2 She-Hulks here? 2 She-Hulks and some additional stuff, maybe? This would be 369 extra power. And since we don't have Cerebro, it doesn't matter if we play our Mr. Sinister or our Scorpion or our buffed up cards. I'm going to play Brood in the left lane. We're going to move our Nightcrawler. If they split their She-Hulks, we're going to have 8 extra power here. We might still be able to win Asgard. We might still be able to win the Wakanda Embassy lane. I don't know. It's a shot. I don't know that it's great. It's not enough to snap off of. And so they probably play the 10 power She-Hulk to the left, I imagine. And we're not going to be able to beat the 10 power, or it could be 12 power with the Wakanda Embassy buff. So they stack both of them into Asgard. They play Shang-Chi to the left, and that is not enough. And so even without the Cerebro, we were able to not comfortably find our win, but we were able to find our win. We will go ahead and take it. Let's jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have Sesh. And just a second ago, in between the last 2 videos, it's actually the only game I've skipped so far, was we ran into what we assume was a Galactus player. They had the very traditional Sunspot into Daredevil, into Electro, and then on turn 5 when they saw what we played, they snapped. And so knowing that they were very likely going to, we don't have any kind of hard counters to that, we don't have anything that can really answer to that play line. And so knowing that, we went ahead and retreated for 1 cube. And so a lot of this deck it's not going to be able to beat everything that's out there. But what it can do is beat a lot of the decks if they don't get their high roll. So had they not drawn into Galactus, we probably could have beaten them. But knowing that they snapped, they likely had the advantage. We tactically retreated. As long as we can do that consistently, then we were in a pretty good spot. The Crimson Cosmos comes up after we play Goose. And so Goose is going to stop any 4, 5, or 6 cost cards from being played there. The Crimson Cosmos stops any 1, 2, or 3 cost cards. So unless it is something below 1 cost, nothing else can be played into the Crimson Cosmos, which is kind of funny. We do have Brood that we can play. I don't think we need to rush this. We could do Cerebro. We can duplicate Cerebro in Bar Sinister, and that's going to be phenomenal. And it will push our Goose up over that limit. We can cap out Westview very quickly. So we're just going to play Korg for a little bit of disruption, and then we're going to slowly play this and let it progress. Because if we drop Cerebro into Bar Sinister on the last turn and all of these are 2 cost, Limbo's not great. Maybe we surprise them and change that with Storm if we draw into it. Again, we're still not playing this incredibly aggressively. We're just going to slowly but surely progress. And actually, I think we're going to protect our Bar Sinister lane here. We're going to play Bar Sinister. We know that with Zero and Titania, they don't run a Killmonger. We're going to be able to move our Nightcrawlers over, and then we'll have the Bar Sinister lane still completely free. So they did snap on us. We're going to snap right back. We were very confident. We're still slow playing it, though. We're not going to let them know what we have. Our Brood, Mr. Sinister, they're not giving us insane value here, whereas our Nightcrawler, our Cerebro, they are going to. Ooh, so they decided to not go with Shuri into Bar Sinister. That's one of my favorite play lines, is the Shuri into Bar Sinister, to be able to make just a massively absurd card. Now, they could do, I guess, Arnim Zola here, and that creates some kind of crazy, absurd play lines as well. I'm just going to pass here. We could move cards, we could do things, but I don't think we need to. We have the Cerebro, that's only 3. We have 4 Nightcrawlers that can move around the board that will end up being really big. So the Doc Ock actually does save us. The Nightcrawlers in mid are completely fine. And so that kind of seals in the fact that we want to do Cerebro into Bar Sinister, because that 0 power is not where we're pushing to win. Rather, the 2, 4, 6, 8 to every single other card on the board is what is going to be our win condition. I kind of like the Blue Marvel. It gives us just a tiny bit more reach. Not a lot, but a little bit. They can copy their Doc Ock's power into Limbo. It's not going to help them. Don't think a Shuri deck ever runs anything that could change a location. Oh, they can actually very sneakily play a She-Hulk into the Crimson Cosmos. So if they skip here, She-Hulk is going to be 0. They can sneak it in between this almost pseudo Professor X lockdown in Crimson Cosmos. But that's fine. We're going to be able to beat it, but we do see the skip come down here. They're going to play a She-Hulk, probably a Taskmaster and a She-Hulk here, which is perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and move our cards over. We're going to throw down the massive Cerebro. That's going to give an 8 power bonus to all of our cards. We should be able to beat the 30 power here and the 15 power here, I think. We haven't done the calculations. It should be an 8 cube win, I think. Oh no, they just play over to the left. Interesting. So I thought they were going to do the She-Hulk, is why they passed on 6, but maybe they didn't have it in their hand. So we do have the Cerebro coming down. It is going to elevate our cards very, very heavily. And so we have the... we very slowly, strategically played that one to be able to gain the 8 cubes out of it rather than just the maybe 2 or 4 from a retreat. But we do push 44 to the left and 44 to the right. That is the second 8 cuber that we have snuck away with in 4 games. We will absolutely take it. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have Nakor, and the first location is Olympia. It allows us to draw into some of our additional resources. I think we're going to start with the Iceman. Next turn we can do Scorpion. That will hurt all of their cards in their hand, and since they have 6 and a skip here, that's going to give us a lot of just overall value. It's kind of that hidden value that Iceman, Korg, and Scorpion bring that is very, very beneficial. So we know that we have the Storm that can come down in Mindscape to make sure that we don't change hands, and so we're perfectly fine with this location. We will kind of wait to see what that last location is, but most likely we're going to target the middle location. So Oscorp Tower is the last one. We could flood them with junk if we wanted to, but it's going to be better to use Storm. However, I think we're going to play it kind of slowly. We're going to play the Nightcrawler to the left. We're going to play Goose into the middle location. I think waiting a couple more turns. Okay, so they go ahead and Storm for us. That's fine. We can actually Storm a second location if we want to. Now, I think they probably have maybe a Heimdall or some kind of hybrid move deck. That's what the Cloak looks like to me. That's what the Storm tells me, is that they're wanting to create these hard to reach locations. And so because of that, we're going to go ahead and push the far right lane into a Storm location so that all they have left to play in is this little bitty space. And it makes it difficult for them to position a movement component with like Doctor Strange or Heimdall, because they're not going to be able to have much space to maneuver within. So they do have a Juggernaut, but that's fine. We don't need the extra power into the middle location. We already have it beaten. The far right lane is now going to be hard for them to reach. At this point, I think they know that they're beaten. I think if we snap, they go ahead and retreat. So we're just going to go ahead and throw our Blue Marvel down onto the board. We have the roving Nightcrawler, and then we do have the Cerebro and Mystique that we'll be able to play as kind of that finale or finisher. Our Blue Marvel comes down. The Arrow, interesting that so it is some kind of like hybrid move style deck list, but they're not going to be able to match our power output. We're already ahead in all 3 lanes. Even if they had something like a Doctor Doom to push 5 more power, that's not quite going to be enough. I think we should be perfectly fine here. Do they ever have a Killmonger? And if so, then this should be fine as well. We're not really pushing to win Olympia. We're pushing to win the other 2 flooded or locked down locations. I could see them retreating here. Yeah, we had them in a very tough bind, and that's what this deck does, is it very consistently does a moderate amount of power. There's no kind of crazy play lines or crazy big combos. It just synergizes incredibly well, and it's incredibly consistent as a result. And so with that one, we are going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. And as always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.